My parents threw a huge party to celebrate my sister's big promotion, with my money. They didn't even invite me. I came home from a 12-hour shift at the hospital, exhausted but glad the week was over. I was heating leftovers when a notification popped up, a video from my cousin Jenna. It showed my parents' backyard covered in lights, music playing, people laughing. For a second, I smiled. It looked like a nice family get-together. Then I noticed the banner behind my sister that said, "Congratulations, Sierra," and my smile disappeared. Sierra was standing between my parents, holding a glass, everyone cheering for her new job promotion. The caption under the video said, "So proud of our girl." My heart sank as I realized almost everyone I knew was there. Aunts, uncles, neighbors. Everyone but me. I kept watching, trying to understand, until I heard my mother's voice in another clip. She was thanking the guests and laughing, saying, "We couldn't have done this without a little help from Cammie." The crowd clapped. I froze. A little help? What was she talking about? Something felt wrong. I opened my banking app and checked my account. My credit card, the one I'd given my mom to pay her medical bills, had thousands of dollars in new charges. Catering, decorations, party supplies, even the band. Every single thing from that party was paid for with my card. At first, I just stared at the screen. My chest felt tight, like I couldn't breathe. I'd been working double shifts for months, trying to save up, sending them money whenever they asked. I thought I was helping my family. Instead, they'd taken advantage of me again. The hurt came fast, but it was the anger that stuck. I could almost hear my dad telling Sierra how proud he was, how she earned it. Meanwhile, I was the one covering their bills, buying groceries, fixing their car when it broke down. None of that ever got me a thank you, let alone a party. The worst part wasn't the money. It was realizing they didn't even want me there. They'd planned it all behind my back, used what I'd worked for, and didn't think I'd find out. I sat there for a long time, staring at my phone, the sound of laughter still playing from Jenna's video. My apartment felt too quiet, too small. I thought about every time I'd told myself they'd notice me one day, that they'd be proud of me like they were of Sierra. But in that moment, I knew the truth. They never would. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stood up, turned off the stove, and looked around my empty apartment. For the first time, I saw it clearly. All those years of trying to please them had led to this. And something inside me finally broke. Growing up in our small Oregon town, I always knew my place in the family. Sierra was the shining star, the one everyone talked about. Teachers loved her, neighbors praised her, and my parents couldn't stop showing her off. She was the golden girl, the one with perfect hair, a loud laugh, and friends everywhere she went. I was quieter. I studied, helped around the house, and did what I was told. When people described me, they always said the same thing. "Cammie's such a good girl. She never causes trouble." It sounded like a compliment, but it never felt like one. I learned early that being good didn't earn attention. Sierra could forget her chores, fail a test, or talk back, and my parents would still laugh it off. If I made one mistake, even a small one, I'd get a long talk about being more responsible. My mom used to say, "You're the strong one, Cammie. You don't need as much." I believed her for a long time. When Dad lost his job during my senior year, everything got harder. Bills piled up, and the stress filled our house like smoke. Sierra was in college at the time, calling home to ask for money while posting pictures of shopping trips with her friends. I started working at the diner down the road after school and used the money to help with groceries. I told myself it was temporary, that things would get better once I finished nursing school. But they didn't. After Dad found part-time work, I kept helping out because no one else did. Mom said Sierra deserved a little fun after college. When I mentioned that I couldn't afford new shoes for work, Mom just said, "You're always fine, sweetheart. You always find a way." I still remember the day I graduated from nursing school. It was the biggest moment of my life. I'd worked 2 jobs to make it through, barely sleeping most nights. I called home, excited, hoping they'd come to the ceremony. They said they were too busy helping Sierra move into her new apartment. They didn't even ask for pictures. I told myself it was okay, that maybe they'd surprise me later. But they never did. A few weeks after that, Sierra got her first full-time job at a marketing firm. My parents sent her flowers, took her to dinner, and told everyone how proud they were. I watched from the side, smiling like it didn't hurt. Looking back, I think I always knew how things were. I was the helper, the backup plan, the steady one who kept everything running. They depended on me, but never saw me. Sierra didn't have to earn their love. She just had it. Now, remembering all of it, I can see how every small moment built up to the one that broke me. It wasn't just the party. It was years of being invisible. I drove straight to my parents' house that night without even changing out of my scrubs. My hands were shaking the whole way there. The closer I got, the louder the music became. When I pulled up, cars lined both sides of the street. I could see lights flashing through the windows and laughter spilling out into the night. It didn't look like a family home anymore. It looked like a place I didn't belong. I walked up to the front door and rang the bell. No one answered. I knocked again, harder this time. Still nothing. Through the window, I could see people walking by, holding glasses of champagne, smiling, celebrating. I felt like I was watching strangers. After a minute, one of the neighbors, Mr. Jacobs, noticed me. He looked surprised but smiled awkwardly and opened the door for me. Inside, the air smelled like food and expensive wine. Balloons floated near the ceiling, and someone had set up a table covered in desserts. My parents were standing near the kitchen, both laughing with a group of guests. Sierra stood in the center of it all, telling some story that made everyone laugh. She looked completely at ease, glowing under the attention. When Mom saw me, her smile froze. "Cammy," she said, like she didn't expect me to exist there. "Honey, what are you doing here?" I walked closer, trying to stay calm. "I just came to ask you something," I said quietly. "Did you use my card for this?" For a second, she didn't speak. Then she laughed a little, nervously, and waved her hand like it was nothing. "Oh, sweetheart, we just borrowed it. We'll pay you back soon." "Borrowed it?" I said. My voice came out sharper than I meant. "You spent thousands of dollars, Mom. On a party I wasn't even invited to." A few guests turned to look at us. The music still played, but the room suddenly felt quieter. My dad stepped in, putting his hand on my shoulder like he could calm me down. "Cammy, let's not make a scene," he said softly. "This is Sierra's night." I could feel heat rising in my face. Sierra looked over then, a glass in her hand, smiling in that smug way she always did. "Come on, Cammy," she said loudly, so everyone could hear. "You should be happy for me. I'm finally doing something successful. Isn't that what you always wanted?" A few people chuckled, unsure if she was joking. I stared at her, unable to speak for a moment. I felt small, like a child again, standing there while everyone watched. My mom tried to take my arm, whispering, "Please, honey, don't ruin the evening." That was it. I pulled away, turned, and walked out. The laughter started again behind me as the door closed. By the time I reached my car, my eyes were burning. I sat there in silence, realizing the truth I'd been trying to ignore. No matter what I did, they would never see me. I didn't go to work the next day, or the one after that. I called in sick, even though I wasn't. I just couldn't face anyone. My phone kept lighting up with calls from Mom and Dad, but I couldn't bring myself to answer. I didn't want to hear excuses or fake apologies. Every time it rang, I felt that same anger from the party boiling back up, so I turned it face down and let it ring. For 3 days, I barely left my apartment. I slept a lot, but it wasn't real sleep. It was more like trying to hide from everything. Sometimes I'd wake up and just sit on the couch, staring at the same spot on the wall. The house felt too quiet. I kept thinking about how I walked into that party and how everyone had looked at me like I was the problem. Lena stopped by after work. She's been my best friend since nursing school, and she didn't bother pretending everything was fine. She took one look at me and said, "You can't let them keep doing this to you, Cammy." I shrugged, avoiding her eyes. "They're still my parents," I said. "What am I supposed to do? Just cut them off." She sat beside me and crossed her arms. "They used your money, embarrassed you, and didn't even apologize. You think that's love?" Her words stung because I knew she was right. I just didn't know how to stop caring. I'd spent my whole life trying to earn their approval, even when I told myself I didn't need it. I'd forgiven them 100 times before, always thinking the next time would be different. But it never was. That night, after Lena left, I made myself a cup of tea and sat down with my laptop. I opened my bank account again. The balance was even lower than before. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Then I saw the charges: restaurant bills, grocery orders, gas. My stomach dropped. They were still using my card. I felt my hands start to shake. They hadn't even tried to pay me back. They hadn't learned anything. It was like they thought I'd just let it go, like I always did. Something inside me finally snapped. For the first time, I didn't cry. I didn't feel sorry for them, or for myself. I just felt cold, calm, and done. I knew then that no apology could fix what they'd taken from me. Not just the money, but my trust. I sat there for a long time, staring at the screen, until a thought formed in my mind. Not revenge, exactly, but something better. Something that would make them finally see what they'd lost. I wanted to show them what it felt like to be left out, to be invisible, to realize too late that they'd pushed away the only person who ever truly cared. That night, I started to plan. Once I made up my mind, everything started to feel clearer. I was tired of feeling small, tired of waiting for someone else to make things right. For once, I wanted to do something for myself, not to prove a point, but to take back control of my own story. One night after work, I sat down with a notebook and wrote a list. It wasn't about money or getting even. It was about showing that I could build something beautiful on my own terms. I decided I would throw a dinner event, a celebration, but not the kind my family would expect. The title came to me easily, a celebration of moving on. I booked a small event hall on the edge of town. It wasn't fancy, but it had warm lights, big windows, and enough space for everyone I wanted to invite. I spent my evenings planning every detail. I chose soft music, simple decorations, and food that made people feel welcome. It wasn't about showing off, it was about peace. When I started making the guest list, my hand trembled a little. I wrote down names of people who had stood by me through hard times, my coworkers, my few close friends, and relatives who had treated me kindly over the years. My parents' names never crossed the page. Neither did Sierra's. This time, there would be no guilt, no obligation. It would be my night. The next day at work, Lena caught me scrolling through catering menus during lunch. "You're planning something," she said, raising an eyebrow. I smiled for the first time in weeks. "Yeah," I said. "Something just for me." When the invitations went out, I kept them simple. No long explanations, just a clean white card with gold letters that read, "A Celebration of Moving On, hosted by Camilla Rhodes." I didn't post anything online. I didn't say a word to my family. But word travels fast in families like mine. By the end of the week, my aunt called. "Sweetheart, we got your invitation. Is everything okay?" Your mother didn't mention anything. I smiled at the sound of her voice. "Everything's fine," I said. "I just wanted to celebrate a new chapter." She hesitated before saying, "I think it's wonderful, Cammy. You deserve that." After that call, I knew it was working. Curiosity spread through my relatives. I could imagine my mother's confusion when she heard about it from someone else. I didn't care. For once, I wanted them to wonder about me instead of forgetting me. Every night after work, I added another small detail, a flower arrangement, a seating chart, a little thank you note for each guest. It was quiet work, but it felt powerful. This time, everything I built came from my own hands and heart. As the day got closer, I felt lighter. I didn't feel nervous or afraid. I felt ready. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming the part of myself they'd ignored for years. The part that finally knew her own worth. The night of the event finally arrived. I got to the hall early to make sure everything was perfect. The tables were set with white linens and candles. The soft music filled the room, and a warm glow from the lights made the place feel peaceful. For once, I felt proud. Not because I was trying to impress anyone, but because I had done this all on my own. Guests started arriving one by one. My coworkers came first, followed by some cousins and neighbors I hadn't seen in years. Everyone smiled, hugged me, and told me how beautiful everything looked. For the first time in a long while, I felt seen. I moved through the room, greeting people, laughing softly, trying to let go of everything that had weighed me down. Then I heard it, my mother's voice. I froze. When I turned toward the door, there they were. My parents stood side by side, and right behind them was Sierra, holding a gift bag and smiling like she belonged there. My heart dropped. They hadn't been invited. I knew instantly how they found out. My aunt must have told them. I could tell from the way my mom's face lit up that they thought this was some sort of peace offering, a chance to make things right. I took a deep breath and walked over to them. My mom reached out for a hug, but I didn't move. "You came," I said quietly. "Of course we did," she said, pretending everything was normal. "We thought this was your way of bringing the family back together." Sierra looked around and smirked. "Nice setup, Cammy. I didn't know nurses could afford this kind of thing." A few nearby guests turned their heads at her tone. My dad cleared his throat awkwardly, clearly uncomfortable. I felt anger rise inside me, but I kept my voice calm. "You're welcome to stay," I said. "Just try not to make this about you." I walked away before they could answer. Dinner went smoothly, though I could feel their eyes on me the whole time. When it was time for the speeches, I stood at the front of the room with a glass in my hand. My hands were steady. I thanked my friends and coworkers first, then my relatives who had supported me quietly through everything. The room was warm with smiles and soft clapping. Then I said, "Tonight isn't about what I've lost. It's about the people who stood by me without using me." The words hung heavy in the air. A few people shifted in their seats. My mother's smile faded. Sierra's cheeks turned red. My father looked down at his plate. I didn't raise my voice, and I didn't name names. I didn't have to. Everyone understood. I simply ended my speech with a small smile and said, "Thank you for being here, for being real." The room stayed quiet for a moment before the applause started. My parents didn't clap. Neither did Sierra. I didn't care. For the first time in my life, I didn't need their approval. When I stood there holding the microphone, I could feel the weight of everyone's eyes on me. My heart was beating fast, but my voice came out steady. I took a slow breath and smiled, though it didn't quite reach my eyes. "I want to thank everyone for coming tonight," I began. "This evening isn't about money or achievements. It's about truth. It's about the people who give and give, even when no one notices." The room grew still. Even the soft background music seemed quieter. I looked around at all the faces, friends, coworkers, cousins. Some smiled gently, others looked curious. My parents sat at the back, stiff and silent. "I grew up thinking love had to be earned," I said. "I believed if I worked harder, gave more, stayed quiet, people would see me. But some people only see what they want to see. Some take kindness as a sign that you'll always be there to fix things." A few people exchanged uneasy glances. My mother's lips pressed into a thin line. My dad's hands were folded tightly in his lap. I went on, my voice calm but sharp. "There's always that one person in the family who carries the weight, who's called strong, responsible, dependable. But that's just another way of saying you're the one they can use. And when you finally stop carrying it, suddenly you're ungrateful, dramatic, selfish." A soft murmur spread through the crowd. I saw my aunt nod slowly, tears in her eyes. Across the room, Sierra rolled her eyes and stood up. "Oh my God, Cammy," she said loudly. "Are you really doing this right now? You sound ridiculous." The room went quiet again. My chest tightened, but before I could respond, my uncle spoke up from his table. "She's not wrong," he said firmly. "We've all seen how things go in this family." Then my aunt added, "It's about time someone said it." Sierra froze, clearly not expecting that. She looked around, but no one came to her defense. My mother's face had gone pale, and my father stared at the floor, his jaw tight. I didn't yell or cry. I just looked at them and said, "Sometimes the truth sounds harsh because it's been ignored for too long." No one spoke after that. The silence was heavy but freeing. I placed the microphone down and gave a small nod before walking off the stage. For the first time, I didn't feel invisible. I felt seen, even if it made everyone else uncomfortable. After the event ended, I slipped out quietly before anyone could stop me. The night air felt cool against my skin, and for the first time in a long while I could breathe. My heart was still heavy, but there was a calmness underneath it, like a storm that had finally passed. I got into my car, took off my shoes, and just sat there for a while, letting the silence fill the space. By the time I got home, my phone was buzzing nonstop. My mom had called 5 times. Dad had left 2 voicemails. Even Sierra had texted, short and sharp messages full of anger. I didn't open any of them. I stared at the screen for a long moment, then blocked all 3 numbers. The peace that followed felt strange but good. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. For once, I didn't feel the need to rush anywhere. I made coffee, sat by the window, and watched the sun rise. It was quiet, just the sound of birds outside and the hum of the city. I realized that this quiet, this freedom, was something I hadn't allowed myself to have before. Later that week, a few relatives reached out. My aunt called to say she was sorry she hadn't noticed sooner how unfair things had been. My cousin sent a message saying my speech had made her think about her own family. I didn't need their sympathy, but their words warmed something inside me. It felt good to know someone had finally understood. Sierra, on the other hand, didn't take it well. From what I heard, she tried to defend herself to some of the guests after I left, saying I was jealous and unstable. But people weren't buying it. A few of her co-workers who had been at the party quietly stopped talking to her. I didn't gloat. I just let her deal with the truth on her own. A week later, I started packing up my apartment. I didn't make a big plan or announcement. I just knew it was time to go. I found a travel nursing job that would take me across different cities for a few months at a time. The idea of seeing new places, meeting new people, and starting over made me feel light again. As I loaded the last box into my car, I looked around the empty room and smiled. I wasn't running away anymore. I was finally moving toward something myself. Months passed after I left Oregon. I had been moving from city to city for my travel nursing job, never staying long enough to settle, but long enough to breathe. Each new place gave me something different: quiet mornings, new faces, and the kind of calm I never had growing up. I didn't think about my parents much anymore. I didn't hate them. I just didn't let them live in my head. One evening, I came back to my small rented apartment after a long shift. There was a letter sitting on the table by the door. It was forwarded from my old address. The handwriting on the envelope stopped me cold. It was my dad's. I stood there for a minute, just staring at it. Part of me wanted to throw it away without opening it, but curiosity got the better of me. I sat down and carefully tore it open. The paper inside was creased and shaky, like he had written it more than once. The first line made my chest tighten. "Cammy, I know I don't have the right to ask you to read this, but I hope you will." I read slowly, one line at a time. He talked about how he had watched me grow up too fast, how he'd leaned on me when he should have been protecting me. He wrote about Mom and how they had always thought Sierra needed more attention, more support, while assuming I'd be fine on my own. "We made it easy to love her loudly and hard to love you quietly," he wrote. And I see now how wrong that was. He said he hadn't realized how much they'd taken from me. Not just money, but trust and time and love I had given without hesitation. He said Mom cried for days after my speech and couldn't stop saying she wished she had listened sooner. He ended the letter with, "We're proud of you, even if we never said it when it mattered most. I hope one day you can forgive us." By the time I reached the end, my eyes were blurry. Not from tears exactly, but from a kind of quiet sadness that didn't hurt anymore. I folded the letter and set it aside. I didn't feel angry, and I didn't feel relieved either. It just felt final. I looked around the small apartment, the half-unpacked suitcase, my coffee mug on the counter, the faint sound of rain against the window. It wasn't much, but it was mine. For the first time in my life, I didn't need anyone's apology to feel at peace. I didn't need approval or recognition. I had my own life now, one that I had built piece by piece, and that was enough. The following spring, I finally settled down in a quiet coastal town in Washington. It was small and peaceful, with streets lined with tall trees and the sound of the ocean never too far away. For the first time, I found a place that felt like mine. I rented a little house near the water, with a porch big enough for a few chairs and a small table. The air always smelled like salt and pine. After a few months of working at the local hospital, I started to make friends. They were simple, kind people. Co-workers who invited me for coffee after long shifts, neighbors who waved every morning. There were no expectations, no pressure to be anyone but myself. One evening, while sitting on my porch watching the sunset, I got the idea to host a small gathering. Nothing fancy, just dinner and laughter with the people who had become my new circle. I spent the day before cooking and decorating. I bought fresh flowers from a nearby farmer's market and set them in glass jars. The menu was simple: pasta, salad, and homemade pie. When everyone arrived, the house filled with warmth and laughter. We ate, told stories, and played music from someone's phone. It wasn't perfect, but it felt real. At one point, Lena, who had come to visit for the weekend, leaned toward me and said, "You look happy, Cammy. Like really happy." I smiled and nodded. "I think I am," I said. And I meant it. Later that night, as we all sat outside under the string lights, I raised my glass. "I don't have a big speech," I said softly. "I just want to say thank you. For being here, for being real, for reminding me that peace is better than approval." Everyone clinked their glasses, smiling. There were no fake compliments, no forced laughter, no one trying to take up all the space in the room. Just honest joy, something I hadn't felt in years. As the night went on, I looked around at the people gathered there. They didn't know my whole story, and they didn't need to. They liked me for who I was right now, not for what I could do for them or how much I could give. That was all I ever wanted. When everyone finally left, I stayed outside a little longer. The air was cool, the sky full of stars. I thought about my family, but there was no anger left, no sadness. Just distance, quiet, peaceful distance. I realized then that my revenge hadn't been walking away or exposing them. It was learning to build a life they could no longer control. A life filled with honesty, peace, and people who cared for me without asking for anything in return. And as I sat there, listening to the ocean in the distance, I knew I'd finally found the kind of celebration that truly mattered.